joining me today in the FEMS Community Corner is Professor Laura Bowater from the University of East Anglia, who has been signing copies of her new book, The Microbes Fight Back, Antibiotic Resistance. So, could you summarise for me briefly what this book's about and what you've tried to achieve with the book?
So as you may or may not know, antimicrobial resistance is a huge problem. It's going to be the biggest killers of humans in about 23 years' time. So we have a real issue on our hands, and it's an issue that not many people know about or are aware of. And I think it's really important that as many people start to know about this, that it's an issue coming up. And I wanted to write something for a general audience to raise awareness of this issue so that people can understand why it's a problem, but also more importantly, what they can do to try and help and to combat it. Because antimicrobial resistance is going to become a really huge killer. It's happening quickly, but if we can do something to push back the date when it's going to become a huge problem, then I think that would be a success.
So, obviously microbes can be scary, but I want to also make sure that we understand that they are our friends too. So, what is your favourite microbe and why?
I was thinking about that. So I would say that my favorite microbe is E. coli. So it's a gram-negative bacteria. If you imagine a bacterium in your head, probably an E. coli is what it would look like. So it's long, it's curvaceous, it has a tail. And the reason that I like it is because it's what I did my PhD on. It's one that's part of us, it lives in our guts. It can be a good guy and it can be a bad guy as well. And my PhD was on understanding how it can live in oxygen, outside in the air, in the environment, but also can live in your gut where there's hardly any oxygen around. So it's what we call a facultative anaerobe. And I think is hugely interesting. He's at the center of what lots of microbiologists study. He's a useful tool, and he's my favorite.
So this next question might tie into your book, but what one piece of microbiological knowledge should everybody in the world know?
So microbes can be good and they can be bad as well, and there are lots of them that can cause pathogenesis and can make us sick. But the one simple thing that we can learn to do better as society is to wash our hands after we've done things like prepare meat, raw meat, for example, and actually gone to the toilet. And if we did that, then infection control would be something that we would be much better at. We wouldn't get sick so much, we wouldn't use antibiotics so much, and we wouldn't have such a huge problem as we do now. So wash your hands is the thing I'd say.
I'll make sure I do that right after this interview. And my final question is, who's your microbiology hero and why?
Alexander Fleming. He's Scottish, a bit like me. He was someone who was just very interested in microbes from the get-go. He had a really good sense of trying to do something to better the world. So he was always interested in finding out a cure for soldiers in the battlefield who were getting horrible wounds. He didn't die from the wounds, but died because they got infected. And he had a real commitment to science, but also he was a brilliant scientist because he was an observational scientist. He took something that other scientists might have dismissed, but he was curious about it. So I really like that part of him, and I just think he's marvelous. He was quite shy, but also he was a visionary, because even back when he received his prize for his Nobel Award, he said at the time we needed to be careful with antibiotics. So that was in 1945, because if we didn't, we would have a crisis. And people didn't listen to him, and where are we now? We have a crisis. And if they'd listened to him, perhaps we'd have put it off. So he's a visionary and a cool scientist.
And he was clever enough to see the future of his own invention, which is an amazing level of genius.
Absolutely, he was an amazing level of genius, and that's what I tell all my medical students as well.
Well, thank you for joining me in the FEMS Community Corner and talking about your book, The Microbes Fight Back, which hopefully you can find in all good bookstores. So I encourage you to buy it, to learn about the AMR crisis, and see if there's anything you can do about it. But thank you for joining me today.
You're very welcome. Thanks for the interview.